All right, guys, hello. We're here again today, and we have Tracey, who goes by Reflections by Tracey, don't you?
Yes,
on
I do.
Facebook.
Yes.
Lisa,
Hi, everyone.
Hey guys, we've asked Tracey to come on today. I'm really excited to speak to Tracey about, I guess, not what she does, but I guess
What she does?
yeah, what you do, but it's more of like, it's not like a job, it's more of like, it's a gift.
It is.
So it's about the gift that you have, and just to make people more understand it. And I guess if you are quite a spiritual person, it'll be interesting to hear about what you, I don't know, see and hear, and how you feel the energy. So Tracey, go into describe what you do.
Okay, so
What you do?
I am a clairvoyant medium, but I also am an empath, which means I take on other people's emotions and their busy heads, and whatever else might be going on with them at the time. Can be quite overwhelming sometimes if they are going through a lot, but it's something that you learn to I don't know, take in and then let the rest of it go. So because otherwise I would be a crying mess on the floor, I guess, if I took everything in that everybody had going on. So yeah, I see things, hear things and feel things. So that just means that I can see spirits from the other side. I have a guide who helps me immensely make sure that everybody is not rushing at me to give them my message. And sometimes I get it in full pictures, sometimes just in pixels. Sometimes I can smell things, like if they were a whiskey drinker or something like that, then quite often I'll smell whiskey in the room. Which is quite an odd sensation when you have never had a smoker in your house and yet you can smell cigarette smoke. And I like the smell of a pipe, and yet I've never in my lifetime known anybody to smoke a pipe. So when I smell it, I'm like, oh, what is that smell?
Wow.
Which I absolutely love. It's just, I think that people don't understand that I'm actually an ordinary person with an extraordinary gift, and that I am meant to share that gift.
When I think of what you do, I think of like just sitting here now, you know, I'm wondering, you know, people must think, are you reading my mind, or is there someone above me? You know, can you feel my energy? Like that's, you know, I guess meeting you for the first time or seeing you or being in your presence, people can think that. So yes. I think for you thinking, oh, I hope you're not picking up on the bad night's sleep I had last night, or something going on, or, you know, in my life. So I guess people would portray that all the time.
They do. And do you know what's really funny is that sometimes I will see somebody they haven't seen for a while, and they'll go to tell me what's going on in their life, and they'll go, oh, I don't need to tell you, you already know.
And you're like,
and I'll be like,
no.
I can get a sense of what's going on with you, and I know something's not right.
Yes.
But as for the details
yes.
of all that, not necessarily.
Yeah.
You know, if people are coming to me for a specific reason, you know, like I always say to people, I have no idea what's going to happen during that reading or what they have to say. And it might not be what they have specifically come for, but the spirit world has other ideas. And so my thing is to say to people, I know if you come with an expectation that sometimes it's not met exactly the way that you think it might be, but I can only give you what I get. And
I was just thinking that. I was just thinking, come with expectations, but not high expectations so you're let down. Just have an open mind, I guess.
Yeah.
You know, obviously you've got an expectation. That's why they're coming to you, and they're going through the process. But I guess just have an open mind and see what opens up for them and comes.
And I suppose you'll find like a lot of people probably come to you when their life is, and I say in turmoil, but when it's a point where it's like, oh my God, I don't know where I'm going with this
Yeah.
job, or I don't know what's happening with my
Almost
family.
like
or I don't know,
guidance.
yeah, and they kind of, so people come to you when they've got questions
Yes.
as well.
They do.
And I suppose if, like what I've always been taught is like when it comes to time and things like that, that's not the same as on earth, it's not the same as it is in the spirit world.
No.
So someone
No, it's
might
not.
come to you thinking, I want to know exactly what's happening, you know, am I going to meet someone, you know, they're all about relationship, and maybe their guides and all their ancestors and everyone looking over them is actually thinking, no, I actually want to tell you, you know, not to take that job off that you get. Like it might be
Yeah.
something completely different that they want to get across. Do you find that a lot?
I do, and I also feel like one of the things I say to people when they first come is if something doesn't come up, then rather than leave disappointed, why not ask while they're here?
Yeah.
You know, like don't leave disappointed and go, well, I didn't really get what I wanted, because to me that is wasting everybody's time. Not for the person doing the reading, because I always feel like I've actually given what I'm supposed to give. But sometimes if you've come with something specific in mind and it doesn't come up, it can be disappointing for the person walking away. And I always think you'll never, you know, you might go to somebody else and the same thing will happen. So why not while you've got the opportunity?
Yeah.
Be bold enough to ask the question that you want, and let's just see what they say. 9 times out of 10, I have usually covered what they've come in for. But you know what, there has been the occasion where it hasn't. And I'm okay with everybody saying to me, I just want to know about this. You know, I did do one reading a couple of years ago, and the person did not want to talk about anything other than what they came in for. So they kept saying to me, no, I need to go back. So the spirit world kept overstepping that, and they'd say to me, no, I need to take you back. I do not want to go outside of these parameters. So they were letting the spirit world know, and the spirit world was like, well, we can talk about whatever we want. And I kind of think, you know, that works both ways. She wanted something specific, but the spirit world wanted her to know other things. And maybe in relation to that, it would have made her think slightly wider, and that's why they kept going there.
There could have been a connection, even though, you know, but yeah, like she was probably going there for a relationship, and they're wanting to talk about finances or something like that. And there could have been a connection, but not having that open mind and having that tunnel vision. Yeah.
It does make the readings different. It doesn't make them good or bad, because I can honestly say I haven't had a really bad reading. I have had one where every time I said something, the person said no. And so for the first half an hour, their answer to everything was no. And yet in the second half of the reading, after they'd taken a breath, everything that had been said in the first half actually came full circle. And so by the end of it, they're not saying no anymore. And it's almost like, it's like a relief for me, because I think I'm actually here, but I have to prove that I'm actually speaking to who is on the other side, and I have to acknowledge what they're saying so that they will continue to speak. But at the same time, I have to be mindful of the person sitting in front of me, and know that their feelings are just as valid as those in the spirit world. So sometimes it can be a little bit of a balance. You just don't know, and I never know from one to the other.
Wow. And how did you first, like, if we take it back, how did this all first, like, did you from a kid kind of be like, yeah, this is what I want to do, or did it come later? Or?
No. My mum comes from a family of 13, and one of my aunties used to say the weirdest things to me as a little kid, and I'd be like, I don't know what you're on, but it doesn't match. I don't know what you mean. And so then I would leave it at that. But she was my favourite auntie, and it wasn't until years later, probably as a teenager, and my mum used to play with the letters around a table, and people say to me, oh, that's an Ouija board, and I say, no. An Ouija board, I liken the Ouija boards to the game of Jumanji, where everything is attracted into that board, and seemingly in that movie it all stays there. And in a Ouija board, that's exactly what happens. So you could have generations of good, bad and ugly inside that board. And I believe that they stay there. But with the letters around a table, once the letters are gone, they're gone. So you don't have to, and I was always taught to, if we were going to do that, to surround the room in white light. So I used to always do that beforehand, but my mum could never make the glass move. So I would get there and the glass would start moving by itself, and my mum would say, oh, Tracey must be here. So now we can have some fun. And so I did that for a lot of time, off and on, while I was a teenager, because I just found it fascinating. But why does it move? Why is there energy under that glass? And why do I know what they're going to say before they get there? So I didn't really understand anything much. It wasn't until I was older, so maybe 18, and I had a dream that my grandfather was sitting on a pelmet, which is really odd because nobody sits on a pelmet because they break it.
I don't even know what a pelmet is.
It's those old-fashioned wooden things that go above a curtain.
Oh, yeah, you didn't know either,
Yeah,
too. Lisa was looking
my age
confused.
now. And he has been long gone before I was born, so probably 12 years before I was born, he died. And so I've only ever seen a picture of him, yet I knew in that dream exactly who he was. And he said to me, you're the one, you're special. And I remember in the dream getting up out of bed and going into the lounge, and I had tears dripping down my face, but my mum was standing there, which was really odd because she didn't live there. And I said to her, you'll never guess what's happened. And she said, I know. And I woke up from that dream with tears dripping down my face, thinking, was that a dream? Was that a dream or was it real? And because I couldn't decipher between either, I decided it must have just been a dream. But then things started happening, and I would know something was going to happen, or I would say something to somebody and they'd be like, how did you know that? And I'd be like, okay. And then a few weeks later I went to visit my mum, and I went to tell her about the dream and stopped because there was a man or a spirit sitting in one of her chairs. And that was the first time I'd seen a spirit, like full body. And I knew it was a man, yet I could know things about him, but the most distinctive thing about him was his face. All the bottom half of his face was distorted. Because my mum said to me, what does he look like? And I said, well, the most prominent thing is that his bottom half of his face is all distorted. And she goes, that's Uncle Jack. So apparently I liked to sit on Uncle Jack's knee when I was really little, but he had a really deep cleft in his chin, so it upset the look of the bottom half of his face, and it always looked a little bit disfigured.
Oh my goodness.
So that was the very first time. And then I got busy with getting married and new job, and then having children, and I really didn't do anything about it for a long time. And but then people would come to me. I had a friend whose father was very sick, and he'd gone into hospital, and there was this bang on my door one day, and she comes running inside. She said, I need to know who's waiting for Dad. And I gave her 2 names, and I don't know where those names come from. They just came out of my mouth like I had been thinking about it for a long time. And she said, if I know who that is, I can go back to the hospital now. So she went back to the hospital and told her dad who was waiting for him, and he passed away.
Oh my goodness.
Within an hour he passed away. And she said to me, I don't think you have any idea how those 2 names really helped him to cross over. Yeah.
I had a similar thing with someone passing, so this goes back to like one of my exes, and he got a phone call early one morning, and he went off to get the phone, and I was in bed. And I looked up, and there was a man standing at my bedroom door. And I was like, I do not know this man. And I could just make it out that it was a man, and I knew he must have been connected to my ex because he had like the darker skin, like a Polynesian. And so then my ex came into the room, and he said that his mum had just been on the phone, and his grandfather was in hospital, and it wasn't looking good, blah, blah, blah. And I said, oh, well, I think he could be here already. I said, there's a man, an older man, and he was like, oh, anyway, I explained it to him. He's like, well, that sounds like him. The phone started ringing again. So he went back down the hallway, and the man followed him. Yeah. Anyway, and then the second phone call was saying he's just passed, but he was saying your name as he passed. And I was like, oh, yeah. And then, so it was similar, like he passed, but he must have come to see his grandkids or something before passing. So it was kind of like, yeah.
It's an eerie feeling, but you know, I think what's interesting is, so when my husband's grandmother passed away, I woke up with a start. It was about 5:15 or something in the morning, and I said to him, I think your Nana's just died. Anyway, the phone rang a few minutes later to say she had just passed. And my husband's one of those people that says to me, oh, if you can give me the lotto numbers, I'll believe. It doesn't quite work that way.
When you said before about people going, oh, it's all right, you already know, that came into my head. People must look at you and go, what's the lotto numbers?
Yeah. I think people think that because you have this ability, I mean, what's really funny about that is that stupid program on TV we used to have to open up all the cases and see the money value or whatever was behind the case. I used to be able to pick those. I used to be able to say what was behind all those cases. But you know, if I'd actually gone on the show, I would never have been able to do it. Yeah. I don't know why I could do it. I can't do it with any other game show or anything else, and my trivia is terrible. But for some reason I could pick what was behind these, and my husband would always say to me, come on, you need to go on that show. And I'm like, no, because it's not meant for that. I'm just having a bit of fun. Like, it wasn't, it wasn't meant to be used in that way.
So with your husband, sorry to jump in.
That's all right.
So with your husband, is he of a very different belief, or when? Or he just doesn't understand it, or?
Well, there's a little bit of that. He's not churchy orientated at all, so he doesn't have, like, whereas I've been to just about every church imaginable in my lifetime already. And although I don't align with any of them specifically, I do believe that there is a higher power, otherwise I couldn't do what I do. And for me, that's enough. He unmistakably can't go past some of the things that I have said in the past that have come to fruition. A few years ago, when we were planning to come to live in Australia, we had a Corvette, and we had to sell that Corvette in order to finish the renovations in our house so we could put it on the market. Before he went, we drove it all the way down south because the guy that was going to buy it was in Christchurch, so he said, I'll come across the ferry and I'll meet you in Picton, and then I'll drive it back. I said to my husband, do not accept a cheque from him. I must have said it 1,000 times. I don't care if he has to go to an ATM or we have to do this some other way. Do not give him a car if he gives you a cheque. And he goes, okay. But he took his father with him, and his father talked him into taking a cheque from this man. And no sooner had he got on the boat with the car, he cancelled the cheque. And then he said that the car wouldn't start. Well, it must have started because we'd been driving around for days, and it had a mechanical check. So there was nothing wrong with it. But when he renegotiated, he negotiated $2,000 cheaper than, and we were stuck because he had the car and the paperwork. So he learned a valuable lesson that day.
Listen to your wife.
That too. Because I said to him, why did you go against what I had said? And he goes, oh, well, Dad said it would be all right. And I'm like, no. You know, sometimes there are things, I mean, years later, when we lived in Pacific Pines, we were supposed to go out on a Friday night, and I had a really bad gut feeling about it. I knew we shouldn't have been going. But he goes, no, it'll be all right. Anyway, we drive down the bottom of the hill to the roundabout before you go out to the highway, and my whole body started to shake. And he took one look at me and we drove home, and there was a huge smash on the highway that day, and so we would have been right in the middle of it. And so there have been a couple of times, I mean, he really does understand that if I'm adamant about something, that you know, he really does need to take note. He didn't listen in January when I said to him, he wouldn't let me go down south. He was going to Newcastle to pick up our boat, and he didn't listen. And I said to him, you have to stop in Coffs Harbour. He did not want me to go because he thought we would both get stuck across the border. And I was so reluctant about not going. I really felt like I was supposed to go.
Yep.
Anyway, he did stop in Coffs Harbour, and he got up 2 hours unbeknownst to me earlier than he said he was going to, so he'd only had 3 hours sleep, and he hit a bridge at 110 kilometres an hour just outside of Coffs Harbour, and he should have died. And when he rang me, he said I didn't stop.
Oh my goodness.
So he knew.
Yes.
We had that conversation for a reason. We had a plan.
Yeah.
You know, we had a plan, he didn't stick to the plan, and you know, luckily he had a bruise and a burn, and that was it.
Wow.
The good thing that has come from that is that
You were
I
able to say, I
realised.
told you so.
No,
That was
actually, I really should have rubbed that in, but I didn't. But what it made me realise is that life is too short. And I had been working for somebody for 14 years, and it was time for me to do my thing and to use my gift. And the lesson from that is life's too short, and we just need to get on with it sometimes.
Yeah.
And was that the Spirit World's way of smacking me in the face and saying, come on,
yeah.
it's
Like,
time.
we've shown you all these signs, but you're not listening. Let's throw you a massive sign.
Yeah. And you know what? 2 days later, I handed in my notice, and there's just been an overwhelming sense of this is where I sit now, and I'm comfortable, and nothing that I have attempted since I gave up in February this year has made me believe any other way.
Yeah.
It should be this way.
I was just saying to someone before who just came in here to look at this space that I feel like during the whole COVID thing, like although like it was a sickness and it sounds horrible, but that kind of time frame was like this real energy shift, or something came through and really turned people's lives upside down. People really rethought their relationships, their jobs. Like, I mean, just the three of us sitting around the table, all kind of, all around the same time. You were like February, we were like January, you were March. Like, we were like, we're not doing this anymore. We're going to do something that brings us joy. Life is too short. And so many people I've spoken to, I feel, I don't know, it was like, as you said, like that higher presence kind of thing. Like for me, I feel like that just came in. Like, I'm a great believer too in there's a higher power, but I'm a great believer in Mother Nature as well, and the power that has over us and all this. I'm like, they like literally just went, let's change things up. And it was during that COVID period.
I think people have now had, like, I never worried during COVID. I know, you know, my boss at the time used to panic all the time, and he would be, you know, throwing his energy, his off energy, I called it, to some of these elderly people. And, you know, and in the end I had to say to him, you've got to stop. I know that you have lots of people in the medical fraternity, but what I'm telling you is that, yes, people are going to die, but at the same time, there is some good going to come out of the end of this, and you know, people will be more self-aware. You know, we went for a year where nobody died of the flu. Before the pandemic, nobody knew how many people a year died of the flu. You know, it just wasn't something that was in the news. Yet hundreds of thousands of people worldwide die of the flu every single year. And that's whether they've been vaccinated or not. The saddest thing for COVID for me was that kindness went out of the window and people pitted each other, you know, whether you were vaccinated or not vaccinated. And do you know, it's nobody else's business. Yes, I did it for different reasons to somebody else. I got vaccinated for different reasons to somebody else. My neighbours didn't get vaccinated, and that's their choice. You know, and you know, I remember one of them saying to me one day, you know, aren't you afraid to be over here? I'm like, why? Why would I be? I don't get it.
Yeah,
I
was
have the same.
We were the same as you. We
yeah.
didn't care either way.
Yeah.
And I was just like, it's everyone's choice. It's everyone's own choice what they do with their body. One thing, and we really noticed that, we had so many conversations about how it really like was nasty and divided people.
Yes.
But then we were like, I shouldn't say the word amazing with what I'm about to say next, but okay, I was about to say how amazing were the floods. I don't mean the actual floods, but I mean the floods came through, like Mother Nature was like, let's just wash this away.
Yes.
And all of a sudden everyone came together. And I was watching all these beautiful people, like Lisa was down working her ass off in Lismore, and stuff like I was just watching all these people come together. No one was going down to Lismore or wherever they were going and saying, oh, before I start helping you trying to clean up your yard, are you vaccinated?
Yeah, and can you put a mask on? And
no one gave a shit, and it was like, oh yeah, that was Mother Nature going, okay, like
wash it clean.
Yeah, I mean it was shit for them, but I was saying it actually
brought humanity
back together. The floods, I think.
And I think, you know, those.
This is what we mean by Paula and Lisa off topic.
But do you know what? I think that kindness in the world comes from many different places, and sometimes we get so, I don't know, busy in our own lives that we forget that the person beside us might have a smile on their face, but something's wrong. And as an empath, I take on probably more than my share, and I think
that's you.
I meant to. Yeah, and I think I meant to for some reason, but I've now learned how to let it go.
That's what you need to learn to do, Reese. Let it go.
So Trace and I have touched on this, and you know.
And I'm just the bitch sitting over here who's not an empath.
So you know this about me, and Trace, you know this because of your gift, but also through spending time with me. Is that I do pick up on energy, and that's why with your gift I'm very fascinated with you, obviously feeling things, seeing things, hearing things. I know I feel energy. A lot I say that to people and they are quite ignorant to it. You might not be an empath, Paula, but you are still open to the spiritual world, that power. So we connect with like that.
Yeah.
But I do feel energy. I'm very empathetic, and if I'm in a situation where it's you feel energy too. I know.
Feel it big time.
I know. If I haven't been in here for a while, Paula needs my energy. Like she says, I need that. You talk about energy like that, and sometimes it drains me. Like I know we've just had the weekend off, and I needed that more than anything. Coming up to that weekend, I needed time. I needed to rejuvenate. I needed to, you know, and I spoke to you about this again, Tracy, this morning about clearing my chakras and meditating more, and I need to practice that more. I need to commit to that again. I have before in the past, and I've let it go, and I've taken on so much, as well as my own stuff that I take on my clients and my friends and my family and my partner and my kids, whatever, and it's really draining sometimes. So I appreciate your gift because I feel like I feel something too, and I've got something there, and you know that, and so do you. But I just I don't know how to I know we're going to work on it, but I don't know how to use it.
Yeah.
No.
I think everyone, well, I won't say everyone, well, no, everyone. So we're all born
Yes.
with that gift. Like,
Yeah, absolutely
you know,
are.
you hear about the third eye and everything. We're all born with it. It's just how you've been molded.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I was very lucky that from day dot, I was raised like, probably like you talk about your mum having letters around the table. That I was raised around all that. So it is not unusual for me. Something would go on, mum would be like, okay, let's just call a medium. We're gonna, you know, it was like that. See, then when I met my husband, and then to hear about Christianity and he was raised Catholic, to me that was really foreign. So I'll be that one that he'll say something which is biblical, and I'm like, who's that? And he's like, oh my God, it's like, you know, it was this in the Bible, and I had never even read the Bible until I met my husband, and I still have only read little bits, and then I'm like, this doesn't make sense, because I thought the Bible was even going to be like a bibliography that went in order, and it's so
not.
yeah. Anyway, that's how stupid I was. But
See, I grew up the opposite
yeah,
to you.
so you grew
So
up.
I grew up. I don't think my parents are very spiritual at all. Is it analytical? They're very analytical. They're very. I did grow up doing my communion and first communion and confirmation. So I grew up doing that. My dad was an altar boy, so I didn't really grow up with it around me and fed to me, but I grew up more in the Christianity side. I'm not religious at all now. Like I stand here and I've been to a church, and I am Catholic, but I don't practice it or preach it or anything like that. But I've more so come into my spiritual side later in life, on my own journey, after my marriage breakdown and finding myself and all that. Then I meet people like Paula and Tracey, and I'm like, oh, I feel that connection when talking about it. I can't talk like this with my mum.
No.
So I've grown up with very different upbringing than you did with your mum. So it's very unusual for me and very new for me. I shouldn't say unusual. It's unusual for my mum.
Yeah.
But it's new for me. But it's like my path. I know that
It feels right.
Yes.
So this is probably the first time in your life where you've had something that actually resonates with you.
Yes.
Alone with you.
Yes.
So it sits well.
Yeah.
You know, I think I was brought up in the Catholic Church.
Yeah.
But when I was 12, my mum joined the Mormon Church, and so we became Mormons. And you know, as I never looked at the Mormon Church other than a family orientated scenario, I guess, or a type of religion. And you know, they did a lot for us. You know, my mum was a single mum at that point, and they did a lot for us. And you know, I am thankful for what they brought into our lives. But as far as religion goes, there was so much hatred that ended up in the world that has ended up being religion based, or has ended up being something about religion, even if it didn't start that way.
Yeah.
And so
is that there's a difference between, I feel, religion and organised religion.
yeah. So I always taught my kids, so they've never been in a church, but I've always taught them that they need to treat people the way that they want to be treated, and they will always get it back. And so is that a higher power? I really think it is, because I feel like a higher power would have had that above all else.
I'm the same. I practice a lot of mindfulness with the kids, and I talk differently to how I grew up. So I practice the mindfulness and being kind, and I talk to them differently. Like I see other parents and mums and that, and I see how they talk and parent, and I'm different. Like I'll sit and I'll do cards with my daughter, and Braden's not quite there. He'll go on Instagram and go, Mum, you should follow this guy. He talks like you. So Braden's like that, whereas Emily's very aware.
Yep.
Very aware.
So my kids are not at all. So, which is funny because my whole family, like my sister actually is doing, she just started last week the course with David Laws.
Yeah.
I don't know if you know, She said just the first session was amazing because my mum, every time Jason Law said that he was doing an evening, she was saying to Lisa, Mum sent it to me and my sister, and she's like, you two need to do this, you two need to do this. Every time he does them on Monday nights. So every time I reply to my mum and my sister, well, it's on Monday night when I run Zumba, so that ain't gonna happen. Anyway, my sister's finally like, I'm gonna do it because it's on a Monday night again. So she's just started. So it's funny that my children are very, they don't get it. And even when I'm like running around, they've always grown up with me smudging the house. So I always, when anything's going on, I smudge the house and Michael will go around and pray.
Yeah.
And so sometimes we'll both do it at the same time. I'll say to him, sometimes, mainly it's just me smudging the house, but if I feel like we need to do a big cleanse, I'll be like, babe, you come in, he might come in. Like, he always stuck crosses at all the doors because that's his belief.
Yeah.
And he would come into the room and he would pray if I wanted rooms cleansed. And I'd be there with the sage and the Palo Santo. So my kids are used to that, and they always joke around, like, if I start like saging that, they're like, oh my God, the energy is fine. We don't need it to smell like the house is burning down. Or like my daughter was on the phone one time and she's like FaceTiming her friends, and then she's like, I think my mum's doing an exorcism on me. Look, she's doing something with smoke around me. And I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, no, I'm just like getting good energy everywhere. But my kids don't really get that spiritual side. Like, I think it's there, and I think you've even mentioned it being in one of my kids, but it doesn't know yet. I think it's there, but they just haven't
tapped into it.
They haven't
My
tapped
son
into it.
won't. So my son writes from the spirit world, and he could actually do it very well if he practiced a lot more. But he's not frightened of it, and
Cautious,
his
maybe?
partner's fascinated by it. But I don't know, he can sit. So he's a lefty, and he can sit. But when he writes from the spirit world, he writes in his right hand, and he has his eyes closed. He can get it perfectly on the line. It's almost like he's looking at the paper, but he's not looking through his eyes. And the first time he did it, he wrote William on a piece of paper, and he said to me, I don't know William. Who's William? That's my granddad. So that's the one that told me that I had the gift. And he was also illiterate. So he had never written his name on a piece of paper before. That was the first time. And my grandson now is called William. I think my daughter has quite an ability to read situations, and sometimes she's got cards, and sometimes she'll pick a card and she'll know exactly in her friend group who that card is meant for. Just intuitively she'll know exactly, and that comes from a level of spirituality that's probably different from mine, but in her own way she is able to deliver something in a different way. She doesn't do it very often, and she doesn't always believe, she doesn't trust her own intuition, and sometimes she'll think of something but she won't necessarily say it, and that's just fear getting in the way, you know.
And then she probably wishes she had said it, because then something happens, she's like, I knew.
And you have no idea how many times that happened to me when I first started doing readings. You know, I would say something, you know, in my head there would be something about a little girl coming, and you know, I wouldn't say it, and then they'd say, oh, such and such had a little girl, and I'm like, yep, I saw her. Why didn't I say?
My thing where I'm really intuitive is pregnancies, and I used to be like that. I used to be like, I wish I had told that because I knew they were falling pregnant, or I knew. So I've started doing it lately, and then sometimes I find it a bit hard, like with friends that you know are really, really trying. And then, so I kind of stop myself by going, I know there's one coming soon, because you don't want to get their hopes up if there's a lot of. But I've done that, and I need to work on that side more. And you know, when you know what your thing is, like, so me, I know like there's a big thing around energy, and especially around this area, like energy work, pregnancies and that. But it's that you don't want to you don't want to stuff someone around kind of by saying.
Well, and you know what? I think the hardest thing for me during a reading, and I've had, you know, a couple of people come to me who've had serious problems getting pregnant, and the last thing I want to do is put their hope in a place where they are solely relying on what I've said, because even though I trust me, I also have, I feel like I have to find that balance, because putting hope into somewhere where there may not be any is a big call, you know. And you know, sometimes one particular couple that I can think of, and I said to her, please just give it a rest, please spend some time reconnecting with you, and you do need help. I'm not telling you that you don't, because I do feel like you're going to need some kind of help, but when you're ready, when your body's ready, and your heart, your head and your soul are all on the same page, it will happen. And so she decided to honour her journey, her IVF journey, and do it live. And so she would have lives, so she would go and have the IVF done, and then when it was time for the pregnancy test, she would do it live. And you know what, the first time she fell pregnant, and I remember her ringing me after that saying, you were so right, I went home and I spoke to my husband about what you said, and she said, and it just made so much sense. We were so wound up that we weren't even giving ourselves a fighting chance. We needed to take a step back. And she said, you know what, we did that, and we brought a little bit of fun back, and then we went down the IVF route, and look what we have. So you know, and now she's got 2. So it's just, sometimes you have to trust yourself. She just needed to know that she needed to go back, take a step back, you know, become the person that you were before you lost yourself in trying to get pregnant, and then go again and see, and when everything's on the same page, it's meant to be.
Might be another good topic for us one week, IVF. I know so many people who go through it and have to deal with it, so
Definitely.
Such a hard thing, because it's devastating if you've been trying for years. I have a friend in New Zealand who they didn't find out until they had been trying for years, and then they didn't find out that he was sterile until they'd been trying for like 5 years, and he had the mumps as a child, and his mother never took him to the doctor, so he didn't get the treatment that he needed, and it clearly made him sterile.
Wow.
So they went down the route of picking a donor, and so both of their children have the same donor, yet both of them look so much like their mother, but they have all the characteristics of their dad, and just because he's not their biological dad, he is their dad in every other way. And you know, they ended up telling them, you know, when they got older, and I just feel like there is a magic there somewhere, you know, like it's not lost on me. The spiritual world and the things that happen in the medical world, and you know, where we are and what transpires over that time and what they find is all connected. You know, I know that everybody's journey here is such a different one, and you know, I always say the spirit world, that we start in the spirit world, and that we're here to have our journey, so our choices and what we choose to do. So that's good, bad and ugly, because that sets us up for who we are, and then we go home. And we go home to those that have passed before us, that are waiting. You know, quite often those that have passed before us will have our children that are meant to come in their care. So quite often I'll do a reading for somebody and I'll say, is there a baby coming? And
You did that with me.
And then they'll say, well, you know, such and such has got them in their care. And so that's why sometimes in children who've never had anything to do with a grandparent or somebody that's passed, they'll do something at some point in their life when you go, how did they know that? or they'll say something exactly like that person would say, and you'd go, how does that happen? Well, they've met them before. And quite honestly, I believe that they give them something of themselves to bring for that specific purpose, so that they know that they've been in their care beforehand. And I think it's beautiful. I really think it is. And the other thing that I believe is that nobody goes to the spirit world alone. And you know, that goes for all those people in the world that have done the wrong thing. You know, I don't believe that the spirit world is purely a place of peace. And you know, as children, we ask that question why from the time we're 18 months old until we die. You know, we ask why about all sorts of different subjects. But in the spirit world, those questions are answered. So we no longer need to ask why. So there's a peace in that already, all by itself. There's a peace.
Yeah.
So true. It is. That's really interesting.
So Tracey, on your Facebook page,
Yes.
do you have Instagram? Or any other
No, I
socials?
haven't got Instagram. It's just my Facebook page, and it is Reflections by Tracey. You can book appointments if you want to see me one-on-one through there. And I have started a new thing called Spirit and Sip. So it just means that you can have some people in your home. Run a bit like a Tupperware party, I guess, if I'm going to liken it to
But
anything.
interesting.
But far more interesting. So I bring the spirit side of it, and you can decide whether you want to sip or nibble. That's entirely up to the host. So you can, my phone number is also on my Facebook page, so you can send me a message or do it via Facebook, whatever suits you.
We're actually doing one this week, aren't
We
we?
are.
I'm so excited. I'm so excited.
It is very exciting.
Yeah,
It'll be
should be
good.
good.
I think it's going to be a little bigger because it's in the hub here, but do you know what? I think the energy here is enough to get us through. And I've bought myself a microphone so everybody can hear me. And yeah, I am really looking forward to it. I think this is the perfect place to have the first big one, and yeah, we'll just see how it goes. See what happens.
Yay! Well, thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you
welcome.
so much.
Whenever
Tracey.
we have a guest, Lisa and I actually are better because we're so focused on you guys. Because
Yes.
Lisa and I don't focus.
No.
We're like the fish Dory.
For us to get work done, we have to be separated.
Yeah.
So
when it's just us on a conversation, it's like, yeah, Dory and Dory, like just swimming off everywhere. So it's nice when we've got someone to talk to and we're focused on that.
Well, my pleasure. It's been really good.
Thank you, Tracey. Thank you
Thanks.
again.
I'm gonna jump up and turn up the video.